Welcome back to JK Mature, the podcast talking about things that matter to young people. This week we're doing movie reviews and we're talking about how realistic are some famous high school movies.
Yeah, so we're analyzing three coming of age stories. One from the mid 80s and two from the late 2010s. So
Right.
these movies are The Breakfast Club, The Kissing Booth, and Eighth Grade.
Yeah, and I think we picked good ones because we do have an older one. We have one that I personally think is not the greatest representation. It's a little cringy. And then the third one, which I think is a pretty good representation of high school and the transition to high school.
Yeah.
So I think we should start with The Breakfast Club, which, like you said, is from 1985. So a little bit older. And just to give a synopsis, if anybody hasn't seen it, it's just 5 school students. They have detention on a Saturday. And they're all just kind of like from different sections of high school. So we have the rebel, the princess, the outcast, the brain, and a jock. And they all just kind of meet each other and learn about each other and start to see each other differently at the end of the day. And I love the movie. I don't know what you think about it, Jack.
I think it's good. I think it was really strong for its time.
Right.
I mean, with anything, there's going to be some outdated things, but I think in large part it stands the test of time.
Mm-hmm.
Like the really iconic dancing scenes and things like that. And the scene where they all explain why they're in detention.
So I think this movie is especially very iconic and it's very well known in society. It's kind of become a cultural moment. And if you haven't seen it, I think it's a good movie to see.
Totally.
So do you want to start with your reviews and how accurate do you think it is to your experience of high school and you think the wide experience of high school?
So while it is the quintessential teen movie of the 80s and 90s era,
Right.
It's not particularly accurate, at least in my high school experience. But I don't think it would be for most people or most teenagers at this point.
Yeah, especially in our age, right?
Yeah, I don't think they do detention on weekends anymore. I don't think they can keep you outside of school hours.
Yeah, but I guess they just had to give a reason why there was nobody else around, so that part makes sense, right?
Yeah. I don't know. What did you think about it?
I think part of it was, especially for me, I used to categorize people a lot, partly because of movies like this and other books that I was reading, and so I think it's changed a lot from that kind of categorization of you can't be a jock and a brain and that. And so I think that it really shows the growth that high school has found, especially going to, for us in art school, right? There wasn't a lot of distinction between, oh, this person gets A's and that's all they are. Like you can be part of the arts and the drama and you still get like straight A's or you're still on the football team. And it's just funny to me to look back on that.
I wonder if it was an intentional categorization, kind of like dividing the blurred lines into clear archetypes almost, just so it's easier for people to understand.
Yeah.
Because I find it hard to believe that cliques could ever be so divided.
Yeah. I don't know. I read a lot of books where it was so divided, and that's part of me going into high school. I thought you could be only one. You get to choose your niche, but that's not how it works.
Yeah. Virtually everyone we know is a mixture of all these different qualities.
Absolutely. I think there are some very important tropes in the movie as well. Again, I find it funny that they end up like smoking weed in the library, and now that's just like a normal thing for us. But like some other tropes
that's something people do all the time.
Yeah.
Did
love high school, man.
So did you have any kind of specific thoughts?
I think you're right. It is like obviously a bit outdated, and that's just how it's going to be.
Want to give credit where credit is due. The Breakfast Club was directed by John Hughes, who is known for some other famous teen movies like 16 Candles and Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Right.
Those kinds of movies are like, they all fit into that category within the 80s and 90s. You know, you've got those three, and then like Dazed and Confused with Matthew McConaughey, or Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
Right. And
they're all classics, but they all have basically the same view of high school.
Yeah, and half of them had Molly Ringwald in it, so
Yeah.
she was big, and then I guess she kind of died.
Well, she's actually in our next movie too. I forget what her
Oh my
role
gosh, I
is.
forgot. She's the mother of these two. Anyways, we'll get into that in a minute. So I would give, for accuracy, The Breakfast Club probably like a 4 out of 10. Just because, you can't keep people after school, and the division is very non-existent now. But I think for enjoyment, I would probably give it a 7 or 8. I really, really love this movie. Even in just nostalgia. I get nostalgia from it, even though I wasn't alive when it was created.
Okay, yeah. I like that rating. I would rate it also a 4 for accuracy. I'm not as connected to it as you seem to be. I only watched it like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So I'd give it like a 5 or 6.
That's fair. I think I watched it with my mom the first time, and having her be able to like recollect how much she liked this movie when she was growing up, or not growing up, when she liked watching it, that must have given me more nostalgia for that too as well.
Right. All right. So the Molly Ringwald segue will bring us to the next movie.
Kissing Booth. Oh boy, this movie.
Dios mío.
Yeah, I will be honest, not my favorite movie for a lot of reasons. For a synopsis, it was 2018, and then they had the new one, I think, come out earlier this year or last year, I forget.
Yeah,
sorry.
it was this year.
Oh gosh.
For some reason, they're also making a third one next year.
I don't know, man. I guess it's just money, but the way I had to summarize this synopsis, it was genuinely a half a page longer than what I wrote down. It was ridiculously long, but to summarize the story, there is this girl named Elle, and she is friends with Lee, and then there's also Lee's older brother, Noah, and these are like the 3 main characters. So Elle likes Noah, the older brother, but can't date him because of the friendship rules that her and Lee have created. And so what kicks off the rest of the story is that one day Elle rips her pants and then has to go to school in a super short skirt, and then gets sexually assaulted when someone touches her butt. And then Noah ends up fighting the guy who did it, but then the guy who sexually assaulted her asks her on a date and then doesn't show up because apparently Noah's been keeping people away from her. And then Elle and Lee, for like a school fundraiser, decide to set up a kissing booth. And Elle ends up kissing Noah because of, shenanigans. And they start a relationship with the condition that Lee never finds out. And of course he does, and they get no fight, and then Elle and Lee eventually make up. And then the weird ending is that I guess Elle was driving Lee to the airport, but it was actually Noah in a costume and had switched places with Lee. And then Elle had admitted her feelings to who she thought was Lee, and then they just end up getting back together. And there you go.
Bizarre.
There was so much more.
Also, wait, why did she agree to go on the date with the guy who sexually assaulted? What the
yeah, that's about the reaction I had too.
That's so dumb.
Well, the reason she decides to go on the date with him is because he apologizes, and then she says like he has to do something to make up for it, and he walks into class with a skirt, and that's how he gets the date. It's just all over ridiculous.
Oh yeah. And this movie is teaching young predators that it's like, it's okay to get to do that stuff as long as you are open for a little humiliation. It's not okay. That part of the movie especially makes me lower the rating, but overall I can't give it points off for it being cringy and like this dumb sort of like rom-com. To be honest, I do like a couple, like, you have a soft spot, or me personally, I have a soft spot for rom-coms just because you turn off your brain movies, right? I have a soft spot for good rom-coms. Oh, I'm sorry, some of us don't have standards. That's not a brag. Yeah, you're right, like there is some problematic parts of it, and overall I don't think the story was well done. I don't think the cinematography was done well, and I don't think it's very accurate. Like, it's very overdone, a lot of the movie. Yeah, in my notes about this movie, I also didn't like it. I think it's a
Right.
bad movie. It's like the kind of Hallmark Netflix original teen
Yeah,
rom-com that they
Christmas
just
Prince.
churn out over and over and over again. This one's the odd one out because it doesn't have Noah Centineo in it.
Yeah. Oh
I mean, it's
gosh.
got a character named Noah, but there's no correlation.
Yeah, and I
Uh,
think part of like it does stray for accuracy, so it gets points off because it the way some of the stuff goes about in this movie, it's just again, it is so overdone. You can't believe any school is like this. It's ridiculous.
and like a kissing booth is so unsanitary. I don't think any school has had that since like
No.
1986.
Yeah, that part seems especially unrealistic because they have blindfolds on. And so, like, even if you are agreeing to kiss like these people, it's still I don't know, it makes me uncomfortable just the thought like someone could go further than these people have agreed to. And like it's so easy to take advantage
Yeah,
of being in that situation.
it just doesn't seem real. Like it doesn't seem plausible that a school
No.
would allow something like that anymore.
I mean I give them tiny, like minuscule points for it not just being a bunch of hot girls. There is both guys and girls and then so like you get
Right.
like 0.0001% points for that movie. Good job.
So, once again, giving credit to the director, Vince Marcello or Marcello, not sure how it's pronounced. Um, I'll give you credit, Vince, even though I don't like your movie at all.
And just to make a little end cap, they did for the second movie, I did end up watching it because I saw it literally everywhere. And they made it even more problematic by adding in the sympathetic gay couple, which
Oh,
is, yeah.
at least there's a couple. Usually it's just the gay best friend.
No, they made it, Elle compares her feeling like Noah is cheating on her. There is, again, it's the way they portray it, yes, it is plausible that he's cheating on her. The whole second movie, it could be solved if they just had a conversation like adults, like genuinely, if they just paused everything for 20 minutes. But then she like compares her struggle with like talking to her boyfriend, just having a normal conversation with this guy wanting to come out and like be in a relationship. And it makes me like viscerally angry because they're not the same things at all.
Yeah, I don't even have a comment on that. That's just stupid.
Yeah, there's your end note. But next we have a very good movie.
Yes.
Oh, we have to give her points. One sec.
Oh, yeah, points.
You do your points.
So, in terms of realism, I give this movie a -4.
Yeah,
And
very fair.
in terms of enjoyment, I give this movie a 2 because the only source of enjoyment was when the movie ended. Also, fun fact, the actress who plays Elle, Joey King, played a young Talia al Ghul in The Dark Knight Rises, which is a good movie if you're interested.
Thank you, but unlikely. I will probably have to agree with you and say that accuracy is in the negatives because of how cheesy it is. But for me, my enjoyment was 1 because I also had to watch the second movie. Not had to, but I also did watch the second movie, and it made me very upset and angry at every single character. So,
Yeah, well, stay tuned for number 3. Maybe that number will get even lower.
I hope not.
But speaking of numbers, we're on to our third movie, which is 8th Grade.
I like this movie. It was good.
I thought it was a fantastic movie.
Yeah, it was in 2018. So again, pretty recently. It's amazing. This came out the same year, and it's so much better.
So much better.
It's incredible. To read out the tiny synopsis, 13-year-old Kayla endures the tidal wave of contemporary suburban adolescence as she makes her way through the last week of middle school, the end of her thus far disastrous 8th grade year. Oh, that's a lot of long words. I don't know. I like this movie that we chose it because it is the transition and it shows the transition instead of just now they're in high school. So it's a good perspective.
Yeah,
But
it's the first transition that you go through.
right.
Like I know we've been talking about high school to life afterwards, but this one is elementary
Yeah.
school or middle school to high school. But you can almost see some of the parallels.
Yeah, it's remarkable how similar the transition is, honestly. Um, but I
Well,
know this is a movie you picked, so do you want to start with your notes?
sure. I'll start off by saying this movie was directed by Bo Burnham, who is a comedian who got his start on YouTube writing comedy songs, and that heavily inspired him to write this movie. Um, he wrote and directed the movie uh,
Right.
because he got famous when he was 18 on YouTube, which was like the early days of the internet, and he wanted to do something that explored kids and their interaction in the internet age and how teens and preteens assume that, you know, because they're part of that internet age and there are famous teen celebrities like them, that they can get there too. And
Right.
Kayla, the girl in the movie, has her own YouTube channel, and she, you know, talks about routine and things like how to make friends at school, and she
Yeah.
has 4 subscribers.
Yeah. Kayla is a very well written character, to be honest. I've watched this movie. This is the most recent movie, so I have more notes on this than any other movie, to be honest. But I'm very glad that you chose this movie.
Go off. Tell us
Go.
your thoughts.
Um, so, uh, so to start off with Kayla, I did think she was a little aggressive in general, and her dad's a bit of a pushover. But I think they also portrayed how easily you can be pissed off when you're at that age, especially with, you know, puberty, you're transitioning, there's so much anxiety, and she portrays that really well.
Yeah,
Um,
and it's worth noting that it's just her and her dad. Like, she doesn't have, her mom's not in the picture,
right.
so it's especially hard if you're like a teenage girl in a household with just your dad.
Yeah.
Sorry to
It's
interrupt. Go ahead.
no. I did find it a little weird because originally when they have like a transition day and she shadows a high schooler, I thought um, Olivia, who was the person she was shadowing, I thought she would be like grade 10 maybe. That way she can have kind of a newer perspective. But no, she's a grade 12. And then they like hang out later with Olivia's group of friends. And so I thought that was just a little weird because it's such a large age gap. And I don't know why Olivia would want to hang out in that, like just in the mentorship position, I get, but as a friend, I just found it a little awkward.
It's sweet if you look at it as Olivia being kind to this young, awkward Kayla who's like 4 years younger than her.
Right.
Um, but realistically, even the nicest people just wouldn't want to hang out with someone 4 years younger than them usually.
Right. Well, you're in a different like stage of your life, right?
Yeah, like you're about to become an adult and this person's about to become a teenager. It's
Yeah.
it's a weird you're right, it is a weird gap.
Yeah. I don't know. Either way, but I liked Olivia because they portrayed her as just as awkward and uncomfortable being around Kayla. Just you can sense how even being 4 years older, she's not like the completely sure of herself that we see in every other teen movie is like the walking down the hall and the hair is blowing backwards. She's just as uncertain and uncomfortable to a point, right?
Right, totally.
You see her like calling it to friends and showing off in front of like this grade 8, and it's very accurate
Yeah.
from what I know.
The one thing we all learn in the end is that we were cringy the whole time.
Yeah.
You never get any cooler. You just stop worrying about it eventually.
Yeah. So I like that. Olivia, she's an interesting character.
Mm-hmm.
I think I should let you talk about the car scene to start.
Right. So if you haven't seen the movie, there is a scene in which Kayla is being driven home after hanging out with Olivia and all her other grade 12 friends. And as we said earlier, Kayla is 13. The rest of them are 17, 18. And the one guy who's driving, he drops everyone else off except Kayla. And then in like a very realistic and incredibly uncomfortable scene, he asks her to play like truth or dare. And then
Yeah,
he it's hard to describe. Like
He doesn't
he takes
outright,
he takes his shirt off and he comes into the back seat with her and stuff, and she's clearly really uncomfortable. And then he just gets pissed off at her when she's not showing signals of interest back.
Yeah,
But he does,
gaslighting.
yeah, like he's a different type of asshole. Like he lets her leave,
Yeah.
but he makes her think it was her fault.
Yeah.
For like leading him on or something.
It's a very accurate scene, but it is disgusting to watch, and I think they did a good job in that sense, because I was genuinely yelling at the screen at how terrible I thought he was being, because especially as he's driving her home, she's still in the backseat like she's a little kid, and he's like gaslighting her, and it is horrible to watch and so terrible to even imagine it happening outside of that. But they did a good job.
Yeah, I would strongly recommend watching this movie if you haven't already.
Yeah. I could relate very hard to everything in this movie almost. Kayla is basically me. It's very weird to be called out like that.
I feel like everyone can find a part of themselves in this movie, like,
yeah,
especially being one of the first generations to kind of grow up with the internet as a given.
right. It's very
like we know more than many what it's like to constantly be performing.
right, absolutely. So at the end there is she meets up with someone her own age. I think she met at a pool party that she went to. It was very uncomfortable. And it is incredibly awkward, but it's the good kind of awkward, because you can tell how excited they are to be friends and how hard they're trying, and it's like so sweet to watch them.
Really, it is, yeah.
Yeah, because they play it so well, and it's exactly how it is like to be sitting and trying to make friends with someone you know nothing about, and you're just trying so hard to be like cool, and then they actually open up and are like, am I being too quiet? Like they're asking each other, and that was awesome to see.
It's so well written. And I know you said you really liked seeing kids being portrayed as kids.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I think another person who deserves credit, I don't know their name, but the casting director.
Oh, absolutely. They did a great job.
Unlike, the Netflix movies we were talking about just before, these people, the actors, are actually the age of the characters. Like,
right.
Elsie Fisher, the girl who plays Kayla, was 13 when the movie was being shot.
She does a great job because she is the age, right?
Yeah.
And like I said, like I should not, the feelings I got of seeing someone be that age on the screen makes me so stupidly happy, and it's dumb. Like I shouldn't be so excited at watching like people play the ages they are, because it gives it like ridiculous standards, especially like, for example, Riverdale. They have like 20-year-olds playing 17-year-olds, and it's not healthy. But like these actors, they look like they should be in 8th grade. They look like they should be experiencing this, and they go through, like, you can see they have pimples, and you can see like they have imperfect teeth, and they're not getting braces yet. Like
because they're kids. Yeah,
like they didn't make them look any older than they should be, and it just makes me very happy.
Yeah, this is by far one of my favorite coming of age stories.
It's amazing. I genuinely think you're correct. Everyone can relate to this. So I think for me, for accuracy, I would probably give this like a 9, especially because I felt so called out. Like we had so many of the same experiences, and it was really genuinely weird. Like we had the same pool party. She portrayed it really well in how I was feeling, because, short story, I went to a pool party. I ended up falling off a slide and smashing my head in front of the person I had a crush on. So that was fun. So they had the pool party scene, and I was laughing very hard at myself. So I would probably give it a 9 for accuracy, and probably I'd say an 8 for enjoyment, just because there are moments where you have to realize that it's so realistic, especially with the car scene. So it does lessen your enjoyment because you're taken out of the movie for a bit, but it's not any less of a good movie, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I would agree. I would say 9.5 for realism,
Right.
and for enjoyment, I would say anywhere from 7 to 10, depends on what mood I'm in.
That's fair.
Because while so, it's such a fantastic uh, movie for storytelling, it becomes so realistic to the point where I forget that it's a movie and I feel like I'm just watching a documentary on actual 13-year-olds,
Right.
which I would be like, okay, that's kind of boring. But no, it's fantastic.
So there we go. I think next week we have 3 more movies following the same formula. We have an older one, we have a cringy one, and then we have a good one. So we will be back next week.
I'm
2 weeks.
looking forward to this. So until next week, when we continue to review movies, uh, this has been Jack and Kae for JK We're Mature. Uh,
See you.
Now in our Instagram bio and YouTube, we have an option for you to submit ideas for podcast episodes. So if you're interested in that, or you have any ideas you'd like to share, please submit them and we will do our best to accommodate. Thanks for listening, and we hope you have a great night.